האם זה באמת סגולה בדוקה? הסגולה ללמוד בזה?
Erev Tov, good evening, Dober V'Yetcher. We are in the Zera Shimshon on Parshas Ki Tisa. We're going to do Os Zion, section number 7. And before we begin, we're going to look at 2 psukim from the Parsha and then 2 psukim from Sefer Yeshaya in Navi, and Nach, the prophet Yeshaya, the prophet Isaiah. Let's start with 2 psukim from the Parsha. This is Perek Lamed Aleph in Shmos, of course, psukim Tes Zion and Yud Zion. These 2 psukim should sound very familiar. The Shamru B'nei Yisrael es HaShabbos, and the Jewish people, the B'nei Yisrael, will keep the Shabbos. La'asos es HaShabbos l'dorosam, to do the Shabbos for their generations, bris olam, as an eternal covenant. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, between me, Hashem says, and between b'nei Yisrael, os hi liolam. Shabbos is a sign or a symbol forever. Ki sheshes yomim asa Hashem es hashamayim ve'es haaretz, because for 6 days Hashem made the heavens and the earth. Uvayom hashvi'i, and on the 7th day, shavas vayinofash, Hashem rested and was refreshed. So those 2 psukim talk about keeping Shabbos, observing Shabbos. And now we're going to hear a little more about Shabbos, but we're switching from Chumash to Navi. This is Sefer Yeshaya, Perek Nun Ches, psukim Yud Gimel and Yud Dalet. Im toshiv mishabos raglecha, if you refrain because of Shabbos from raglecha, from going, walking to the usual places you would go, asos chafotzecha, to do the things you normally would want to do, b'yom kodshi, on my holy day, v'korosa la Shabbos oneg, and you call my Shabbos a delight, likdosh Hashem mechubad, you call the holy day of Hashem honored, v'chibadito, and you honor it, you honor Shabbos, me'asos tirachecha, from doing the regular normal things you would do, mimtso cheftzecha, from getting involved in the things you normally would want to get involved in, v'daber davar, and you refrain from speaking about the things that you would normally speak about when it's not Shabbos. Next pasuk. Oz tisanag al Hashem, then you will be enjoying Hashem, or putting your enjoyment with Hashem. V'hir kavticha al bomosei oretz, and he will ride you, or he will place you on the top of the world. V'ha'achalticha nachalas Yaakov avicha, and he will feed you from the inheritance of Yaakov your father, the patriarch Yaakov Avinu. Ki Hashem diber, because the voice of Hashem has spoken. So we see that in the Torah it talks about keeping Shabbos, and of course the fundamental idea of Shabbos comes all the way from the creation of the world. When Hashem created the world, the Torah tells us, in 6 days, and then rested on the 7th. And in Yeshaya it talks about refraining from doing the things and speaking about the things and going places that we do during the week, and putting all that aside to follow Shabbos carefully, meticulously, and to get our enjoyment from keeping Hashem Shabbos rather than get our enjoyment from doing the things that we do during the weekdays. Now we're going to go into the Zera Shimshon, Os Zion, section 7. Shabbos Perek Kol Kisvei. The Zera Shimshon starts with a Gemara from Masechta Shabbos, and it says as follows: Kol ha'me'aneg es haShabbos, anyone who delights in Shabbos, anyone who enjoys Shabbos, meaning you eat well, you drink well, you take walks, you rest. If you do the things that bring you joy on Shabbos, nosnim lo nachala, they give to that person an inheritance below mitzarim, without limits, an inheritance, a reward that is limitless. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, this is our pasuk from Sefer Yeshai that we read a moment ago. Nachalas Yaakov Avicha. You will, if you enjoy Shabbos properly, you will receive the inheritance of your forefather Yaakov. Lo ke Avraham, you will not. The pasuk doesn't say you will receive an inheritance from Avraham. Lo ki Yitzchak, and it doesn't say you will receive an inheritance from Yitzchak, v'chulei, etc. Ela ki Yaakov. The pasuk specifically says your reward, your inheritance for enjoying Shabbos the right way is going to be from Yaakov Avinu. Dichsiv Bey, and it's written regarding Yaakov, Uforotzta, Yama, Vakedma, v'chulei. Hashem told Yaakov, you will break out, you will burst forth to the west, to the east, to the north, to the south, in every direction. And the Gemara is telling us that pasuk, when Hashem said to Yaakov that pasuk, and that pasuk can be found in the famous story in the Torah of Yaakov having the dream of the ladder placed on the ground, and the top of the ladder going up to Shamayim, and the Malachim, the angels, were going up and down. And that story, Hashem said to Yaakov, I'm going to give you the land of Eretz Yisrael, and also you're going to burst out in every direction. So the Gemara says bursting out in every direction means that for Yaakov, his promise from Hashem was going to be limitless. It wasn't going to be contained within the borders of Eretz Yisrael. It was going to break out of the regular borders of Eretz Yisrael. And that's the reward and the nachala that a person receives, according to the pasuk in Yeshaya, when they observe Shabbos properly and enjoy Shabbos and delight in Shabbos properly. Next paragraph. V'hamamar hazeh kosher ha'havon. This teaching from the Gemara in Masechta Shabbos is difficult to understand. De'ech yitochein, how is it possible? Sheyiyeh le'echad nachala b'lo mitzarim. How can it be that any person can have a reward in this world without limits? Dahainu b'li techumin ugivulin. Meaning there's no limits and there's no borders, there's no parameters to a person's reward. How is, Zera Shimshon said, how is that possible in this world? Sha'afilu yitnu lo kol ha'olam. Even if Hashem were to say, I'm going to give you the entire world, yiyu lo mitzarim ugivulin, the entire world is a finite world and there are borders and limits. Even if Hashem did say he's going to give a person the whole world as a reward. Ve'od, additionally, im yiyu harbe sha'angu es Shabbos. What if more than one person enjoys Shabbos properly? You're going to have many people who enjoy Shabbos. How is it possible in this world to give all the different people nachala below mitzarim, an inheritance, or meaning a reward without limits, l'chol echad ve'echad, to each and every one? So the Zera Shimshon says these words don't seem to be intended to be taken literally. This idea that if a person truly enjoys Shabbos the right way, they're going to receive a nachala, a reward, b'li mitzarim, without any limitations, doesn't seem to possibly be literally true, because in our physical finite world, it's not possible to receive a reward that is unlimited and that is infinite. And certainly there will be many, many, many people who observe Shabbos correctly. So then in this world, you have to divide up their reward. Not one person can't receive all the reward from the whole world. Once you're dividing it up, then there are limitations. So what does it mean to receive a nachala below mitzarim, an inheritance, meaning a reward without any limitations? Next paragraph. Ve'ein lomar, and you can't say the Maire Bitovos Olam Haba, that when the Gemara in Shabbos said that a person rejoices on Shabbos properly and correctly and fully, you can't say they're going to receive their reward in the next world where they could receive a reward that is infinite. the im kain, because if so, if that's what the Gemara was talking about, my kamash molon nostim lo nachol v'chule. What is the Gemara coming to teach us by saying if you keep Shabbos and observe it and enjoy it correctly, you're going to get this special reward in the next world? V'halol kol hatovos shel olam haba. All of the good rewards, all of the goodness in the next world, heim beli shiur u beli kitzva, are without any set amount and without any limitation. Olam shekulo tov, the olam haba is a world that is completely good. V'kulo orach, and it's completely long. It's unending. Olam ein sof, it's the world that's called no end. It's an infinite world. So the Zera Shimshon says, don't think that the Gemara in Shabbos that talks about receiving a reward without limitations is talking about a reward in Olam Haba, because that wouldn't apply just to Shabbos. That would apply to all the reward for all the mitzvos that we do in this world. We receive an infinite reward in the next world without limitations. So it must mean a reward in this world that is without limitations, but the words without limitation must have a different meaning than we would normally attach to them. So right now, the Zera Shimshon's job that he's set for himself is to explain to us, what does the Gemara in Shabbos mean when it says that if you fully delight in the Shabbos and enjoy the Shabbos correctly, you will receive a reward that is below Mitzarim without any limitations. What does that mean? Next paragraph. Elo ha'inyan hu. But rather, this is what it means. Shemidas hachesed shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the attribute of kindness of Hashem, Hashem's attribute of chesed, of kindness, hoya ritzona, its will would normally be lehispashet, to spread out letovas habrios ad ein cheker, to spread around for the good, to bring good and spread it to all creatures ad ein cheker, until there's no limit. That's what the Midas HaChesed would like to do. The Midas HaChesed is built, is designed, so to speak, to just want to do chesed and kindness and spread it to all the creatures without any limits. Omnam, however, Midas Hadin, the attribute of justice, Hashem's attribute of justice, Me'akeves biyoda, refrains prevents the Midas HaChesed from doing that. Midas Hadin stops and prevents the Midas HaChesed, the attribute of kindness, from bringing unlimited kindness to everyone in the world. Ve'eno rotza shetispashe kiritzona. Hashem's attribute of justice does not want the Midas HaChesed to spread in an unlimited way to everyone all around the world, to all the creatures. Urayo ledover, and there's a proof to this. Masha Omru Razal, what the Rabbanon say, this comes, as you can see in the parentheses, from a Medrash in Vayikra Rabbah, so the Medrash Rabbah on Sefer Vayikra, based on a pasuk in Tehillim. Al pasuk tzidkoscha kehararei el, your righteousness is like the mighty mountains. Heyach di hishpata hishpata. So Chazal say, what does that mean? It means that wherever you want your chesed to spread, it spreads there within its limitations. Next paragraph. Hamidas hadin eino me'akeves. Hashem's attribute of justice does not prevent the kindness from spreading everywhere in an unlimited way, ela kisheyesh mekadrakim, unless there are accusers. Kimoshe matzinu be'Iyov, as we find in a pasuk in Sefer Iyov, the book of Job, dechsiv be, it's written there, ma'aseh yodov be'rachta umiknehu paratz ba'aretz. This is the Satan talking, the accuser, the epitome of the accuser of the mekatreg against the righteous people, comes and says to Hashem, Maaseh Yodov Beirachta, Hashem, look what you did with Eov. You've blessed the work of his hands, and his property, his cattle, have spread Ba'aretz throughout the land. You've blessed him with too much abundance. Shelo kaminaka olam, more than is the normal way of the earth. Va'al yedei kitrug hasatan, and through this accusation made by the Satan, ibed hakol, Eov lost everything. V'nimna mimenu hachesed, and the kindness, the tremendous abundance and blessings and kindness that Hashem had until that point blessed Eov with, were then prevented from continuing to come to Eov. So the Zera Shimshon says from Sefer Eov we see that Eov was blessed with incredible abundance and kindness and blessings from Hashem, but it was the Satan who came along and started making accusations against Eov and complaining to Hashem about the abundance that Eov had been blessed with, and therefore it stopped. So we see that the accusations of the mekatragim, the accusers, can bring a stop to the midas hachesed, and that's how the midas hadin operates. And we'll see that that's a very significant point as we continue. Vihine, next paragraph, next page, top right column. Vihine hamikatragim enom mosifim koach, the accusers, beings that are called accusers, do not increase in strength, elakisha adam note, unless a person is inclined, achar ta'avosov, after his desires, his physical desires, v'hanoas gufo, and inclined to bring pleasure to his body, hakorutz mechomer, which was created from clay, from very earthly material. So the mekatragim gain strength. And if they gain strength, it means they have more power to prevent a person from receiving chesed from above, receiving the kindness from and the blessings from Hashem's midas hachesed. The mekatragim can have more power to stop that from happening, to stop the blessings from coming to a person, if that person follows after his ta'avos, his physical desires, and the pleasures of his or her body. Lochein kishenota ledevarim ruchaniim. This is not the case when the person is inclined to pursue spiritual things, lahanoas nishmaso, to bring pleasure to his neshama, his or her soul, rather than his or her body. She'oz, because then ein lohem reshus lehiskarev. Then the mekatragim, the accusers, have no permission to come close and get in the way of the chesed that's coming to the person. So let's pause for a moment. This is a very important and fundamental principle that the Zera Shimshon is laying out for us. It can change a person's life. Zera Shimshon says that the midas hachesed, the attribute of kindness from Hashem, is trying so hard at all times to bring us blessings and abundance and kindness from Hashem. But the accusers, the midas hadin, when accusers accuse us, then the midas hadin stops the chesed and limits the chesed that can reach us. And the mekatragim are strengthened in their ability to limit the chesed we receive and the blessings we receive if we're following after and pursuing physical pleasures in this world. But if we're pursuing spiritual pleasures in this world, then the mekatragim, then the accusers don't have the power. Their power of stopping the chesed from reaching us is reduced. Now the Zera Shimshon is going to connect this to Shabbos specifically. Uviyom Shabbos, on the day of Shabbos, mischabim haklipos, the powers, the forces of impurity, like the mekatragim, like the accusers, are hidden. They're subdued. Ki Tisa b'Zohar Parshas Vayakel, as it states in the Zohar on Parshas Vayakel. V'zehu, and this is the meaning, mizmor shiur leyom hashabbos. A mizmor, a song of a psalm of a song for Yom HaShabbos, for the day of Shabbos, liyom sheshovsu hamazikim min ha'olam. The Zohar says, what's one of the meanings of Yom HaShabbos, the day of Shabbos, which means a day of rest? It's the day when the mazikim, who are part of the destroyers and part of the kochos hatuma and the accusers, forces of impurity, are shavsu. They are put to rest. They are forced to be powerless, min ha'olam, from the world. So Shabbos is a day when these forces of impurity and these mekatrigim, these accusers that can prevent us from receiving the chesed from Hashem, are stopped. V'lochein diyek lomar, next paragraph. And that's why the Gemara in Shabbos used a precise language. Kol ha'me'aneg es haShabbos, everyone who enjoys Shabbos and delights in Shabbos. V'lo amar kol ha'meshamer es haShabbos. The Gemara didn't say everyone who observes Shabbos gets the benefits, gets the reward without sof, without end, without limitations. It didn't say that. It didn't say everyone who observes Shabbos. It said everyone who delights in Shabbos receives a delights which are without limitations. Sha'af al pisha be'oneg zeh. The reason it used that language is because the Gemara wanted to make the point of, even though a person on Shabbos is delighting, who nota achar hanoas gufo, and he is now following after and embracing the pleasure of his body, right? When we eat a delicious meal on Shabbos, when we drink wonderful drinks and wine, and we enjoy Shabbos fully with our bodies, im kol zeh, nonetheless, lo yosif koach bachitzonim, that because it's on Shabbos and because our intention is to enjoy Shabbos and fulfill the mitzvah of oneg Shabbos, of truly enjoying Shabbos, even though we're following after the pleasure and giving great pleasure to our bodies, great physical pleasure, it doesn't add a single bit of strength to the chitzonim, to the mekatrigim, to the kochos hatuma, to the klipos, to the powers of impurity. The loyia reshus lemidas hadin, and enjoyment on Shabbos doesn't give any authority or permission to the attribute of justice, le'akev al midas hachesed, to prevent Hashem's attribute of kindness, shelo tispashet olav, not to spread on a person, b'shefa godol, with great abundance. Ad sheyitnu hamekatrigim mida ugvul letova haruuyo lavo alav. The mekatrigim are not given the ability to put limitations on the goodness that can come to such a person. So let's pause here, because now the Zera Shimshon's adding to the very highly significant statement he made before. Previously, the Zera Shimshon told us that a person, in the previous paragraph, Zera Shimshon taught us that if a person focuses on devarim ruchaniyim, spiritual things, and things that bring pleasure to his neshama, rather than things that bring pleasure to his body, then there will be no power. There will be a reduction in the power of the kochos hatuma, of the impure forces and the mekatrigim, to limit the chesed that comes to a person. Now the Zera Shimshon says, on Shabbos, a person gets a free pass. They can enjoy and focus on earthly delights and physical pleasures and eat wonderful meals and feast and enjoy and rest and relax and take walks and schmooze and hikes and all the things that we can do to enjoy Shabbos. A person can do those things, and it doesn't at all limit the chesed that is striving to reach us from Hashem's midas chesed, Hashem's attribute of kindness. Kemoshe darshu al umiknehu paratz ba'aretz. Similarly to what Chazal said, as the Zera Shimshon mentioned previously, in Sefer Eov, when the Satan said, his property is spreading in the land, hanizkar la'el, which was mentioned before. The milas paratz, the word spreading, mashma sheparatz al hagevulim v'hatechumim. It doesn't just mean spreading, it means breaking through boundaries and limitations. Lo ke'Avraham sheyotza mimenu Yishmael. And this is not like Avraham, who had not just the son Yitzchak, but he had a son Yishmael, and this limited Hashem's full abundance of kindness from coming to him. Velo ke Yitzchak, and this is also not like Yitzchak sheyotza mimenu Esav, who had not just a son Yaakov, but also a son Esav. So now the Zera Shimshon circling back to this point in the Gemara about us receiving benefits like Yaakov, but different than Avraham and Yitzchak. Why? Because Avraham and Yitzchak were both limited in the Midas HaChesed, completely giving them an abundance of Hashem's blessing and kindness. Why? Because Avraham didn't just have a righteous child; he had a righteous child, and then he also had Yishmael, and Yitzchak had a son Esav. He didn't just have a son Yaakov. So they were limits. Their reward had limitations. Umidas hadin hayusallah, and Hashem's attribute of justice had. Ezo, let's continue to the top of the next column on the left. Ezo tana alehem. The Hashem's attribute of justice had a claim to make against them because of the fact that they brought not just a righteous child into the world, but a righteous child along with a not righteous child. Ela ki Yaakov, the reward we receive is similar to Yaakov, shehoyasa mitoso shlema, whose bed was complete, which means all of his children, all of his progeny were righteous and stayed part of the Jewish people. We always have to remember that with Avraham, only his son Yitzchak carried on the Masorah, carried on the heritage and the mitzvos of the Jewish people. Yishmael did not. In the case of Yitzchak, only his son Yaakov carried on the Masorah that Yitzchak had received from Avraham and the traditions and the heritage to pass it on to his children. But Esav did not. Yaakov, all of his children carried on the heritage, the tradition, and the mitzvos, and the identity that came from Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov. So Yaakov was able to receive the chesed from Hashem in a way that Avraham and Yitzchak were not. Next paragraph. V'lo tomar shehamidas hadin lo yeh lo rishus lekatrek alov bifrat. And don't say that perhaps this only means that Hashem's attribute of justice doesn't have permission to accuse a person by himself. Omnam tekatreg alov bichlal. However, Hashem's midas hadin is allowed to make accusations against a righteous person as part of the whole Jewish people. Ki ha'olam nidon achar rubo. Because as you can see in the parentheses, the Gemara in Kedushin states that the world is judged based on the actions of the majority of the world. So perhaps a person can be a good person and a righteous person, but the chesed will be prevented from coming to them because of the actions of the other people in the world who aren't righteous. Eliyeh nitzol af mishibud malchios. Zera Shimshon says that's not true because Chazal tell us that if a person is a righteous person, even if there are other people, who deserve to be punished for their averos and even deserve shibud malchios, they deserve to be exiled and to be in servitude to other nations, this will not impact the righteous person who will be protected from that punishment. Next paragraph. The im tomar, and if you say, how can we say the bischus shema'anigas Shabbos yinatzel me'amekatrigim? How can we say that through the merit of truly enjoying Shabbos in the right way, a person will be saved from the accusers? V'ha, and behold, im yeh lo avonos acherim, if this person has other sins, should be shvilam tiyel midas adin tana alav, and because of these other sins, they're doing Shabbos beautifully, but they're unfortunately falling short in other areas and other mitzvos. So then shouldn't that mean that the Hashem's attribute of justice can make a claim and an accusation against them? Lo yinatzel, so the person won't be saved. K'moshe matzinu be'Avraham v'Yitzchak, like we find with Avraham and Yitzchak, that they were presented from receiving all of the chesed that Yaakov did. V'yesh lomar, and we can say to answer that question, she'Avraham v'Yitzchak shiny. Avraham and Yitzchak are different in a certain way, which the Zera Shimshon will spell out for us in a moment, but let's just understand what Zera Shimshon is saying. Zera Shimshon is saying we have to distinguish between Avraham and Yitzchak on the one hand and Yaakov Avinu on the other hand. Avraham and Yitzchak did not receive the full chesed that they could have received, but Yaakov, which is a limitless chesed, but Yaakov received a limitless chesed, and that's what the pasuk in Yeshai that we read in the very beginning at the Zera Shimshon quoted in the first paragraph is talking about. The reward for a person who fully enjoys Shabbos will be like Yaakov Avinu's limitless reward. Why are Avram and Yitzchak different in this way from Yaakov? Shehem lo shomru es haShabbos, because they did not fully keep Shabbos. Ki Tisa beBereshis Rabbah Parsha Yud Aleph, as the Medrash and Medrash Rabbah and Bereshis states in section 11, and we're going to explain all this once we finish this reference, because A, it's very, very important, and B, it's very fascinating. On the pasuk, al pasuk vayechulu hashamayim, the Medrash Rabbah makes this comment about Avram and Yitzchak not fully keeping Shabbos, but Yaakov fully keeping Shabbos on the pasuk of vayechulu hashamayim, va'ayin sham, see there in the Medrash Rabbah. Aval Yaakov shamar es haShabbos, but Yaakov did fully keep Shabbos. K'moshe ha'erachnu le'el b'Parshas Vayishlach, as we've discussed at length back in Sefer Bereshis on Parshas Vayishlach, Os Yud Aleph, section 11. Al pasuk, on the pasuk Vayichan es Penei Ha'ir, when Yaakov Avinu returns from his stay with Lavan, the Torah tells us Vayichan es Penei Ha'ir, he camped at the face of the city. And on that pasuk, the Zera Shimshon has a long discussion about how we know Yaakov fully kept Shabbos, but Avram and Yitzchak did not. Va'ayin sham, and see over there in that piece. Again, if you want to look at this, you go back to the Zera Shimshon on Parshas Vayishlach, and you look at section 11, and you'll see this full discussion. But I'm going to summarize it now, again, because it's so interesting and so important, and we can't really understand this Zera Shimshon, this last section, unless we understand what he said, what he explained previously. So this is what he says. Avraham and Yitzchak, Chazal teach us, kept all of the mitzvos in the Torah. However, they had certain challenges in trying to and wanting to keep all of the mitzvos. One of the challenges is that in a different Gemara, meaning not the one that says the Avos kept the mitzvos, in a different Gemara it says that a non-Jew, specifically a Ben Noach, a descendant of Noach, who rests on Shabbos, who doesn't do malacha on Shabbos, in other words, who observes the prohibitions against doing malacha, doing prohibited labors and work on Shabbos, such a person is chayav misa, such a person is liable to the death penalty. So Avraham and Yitzchak knew this teaching, and they were worried that they could fall under this penalty of chayav misa, of the death penalty, if they refrained from working on Shabbos. Why? Because they said we could be considered b'nei Noach. right? Abraham and Yitzchak came from, obviously, everyone after Noach's time were B'nai Noach. And so they said we could be considered B'nai Noach on the one hand. On the other hand, Hashem has given special nevuo, special messages and prophecies and special mitzvos to Abraham and to Yitzchak that were not given to the descendants, the regular B'nai Noach. So the Zera Shimshon, again, back in Parshas Vayishlach, section 11, says that they had a suffix, they had a doubt. And the doubt was, should we fully observe Shabbos and every manner and every aspect and refrain from doing malacha, refrain from doing the prohibited work on Shabbos, because our identity is a new identity of the identity of the B'nai Avraham, who later on we would become called B'nai Yisrael. Is that our identity? In which case we should fully observe all of the mitzvos. Or the doubt was perhaps we should be considered B'nai Noach still, and therefore we're not allowed to keep Shabbos and refrain from doing work. So they made the decision. This is Avraham and Yitzchak made a decision to do things to honor Shabbos and to show that Shabbos was special, but not to refrain from doing work and labor on Shabbos, because specifically that would go against the teaching that says if a Ben Noach refrains from doing work on Shabbos and doing the prohibited labors on Shabbos, then they're chayiv misa. That was the choice that Avraham and Yitzchak made. But the Zera Shimshon goes to great lengths to show us that Yaakov Avinu started off following that tradition, you might say, of honoring Shabbos, but not refraining from malacha, from work on Shabbos. But then the encounter that Yaakov had with the Malach, the famous story of Yaakov wrestling with a Malach and the Malach wounding him in his leg, and Yaakov limping after that, taught Yaakov a lesson. How it taught Yaakov a lesson is beyond the summary right now, but again, I encourage everyone to look back there. Taught Yaakov that he should consider himself a fully fledged new type of person, a Ben Avraham and Yitzchak, and part of a new nation called B'nai Yisrael, and no longer consider himself a Ben Noach, and therefore he started fully keeping Shabbos and even refraining from malacha, and so Yaakov, uniquely deserved the nachal of B'li Mitzorim that Avraham and Yitzchak did not deserve. And that circles all the way back to the first paragraph as to why the Gemara in Shabbos teaches us that a person who kind of throws himself or herself into observing Shabbos fully, enjoying Shabbos fully, and all the physical ways that we can enjoy Shabbos, a person who does that with the appropriate kavanos, right? It doesn't mean a person says, oh, well, I love to eat. I don't even care about the fact that it's Shabbos. I'm just going to eat all this food that I love. No, it has to be eating food and drinking and doing other things to enjoy Shabbos for the purpose of enjoying Shabbos, enjoying the special gift that Hashem gave us, this special day. Such a person receives the rewards of B'li Mitzorim, like Yaakov Avinu, chesed from Hashem, kindness from Hashem, without limitations, without boundaries. God willing, with Hashem's help and with Hashem's blessings, all of us should be zocha. We should merit to observe Shabbos fully and correctly, to enjoy Shabbos fully and correctly, and all the ways we're supposed to do that, and receive from Hashem the blessings in abundance that come from Hashem's midas hachesed, without any restrictions or prevention from the mekatragim, from the accusers. So v'chein yi ratzon, so it should be Hashem's will. Yasher koach for joining in the Zera Shimshon with us this week. Wishing everybody a freilich in Purim, a Purim sameach, a joyous and happy Purim celebration and the observance of the special mitzvos of Purim, of course. And we look forward, God willing, to learning together in the Zera Shimshon next week.